I have the best job in the world. I get the opportunity to consult numerous businesses, but the real fun comes meeting with the brightest minds about the unique and exciting things businesses are doing in our community. Today I'll be introducing Jay Curry, who I have now coined the most interesting man in Texas. His passion for helping business executives succeed is second to none. Listen closely to his advice for the C-suite shot callers, his experiences as a life and business coach, and his story about personally consulting Sam Walton of Walmart at the fancy Holiday Inn Express in Bentonville, Arkansas. Hey guys, welcome back. Matt Worsham with the Lone Star Business Podcast, as always, sponsored by Shepherd and Walton Employee Benefits. Super excited today to introduce Jay Curry. He will be our interviewee today. And we were talking a little bit before the show, and I thought it was funny that I think I'm just going to coin him the most interesting man in the world. I'm not sure there's anything Jay hasn't done. So looking forward to hearing some war stories and some great advice. So Jay, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really looking forward to talking.
It's a real pleasure. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent, excellent. So tell us a little bit about how you got started. So you're currently the co-founder of Texas Business Radio, and we'll kind of start there. Would love to hear a little bit about what that is and how that got started and how that kind of brought you into the radio business.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, but so I have a group of what I call Houston Executive Advisors. It's a group of service providers that sell into the CEOs and the business leaders that I coach.
Okay.
And we got a new member named Matt Register. And I called him about a week, 10 days after he had joined the group and said, Matt, we need to get together so I can learn what you do. He was an investment banker.
Matt was?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So Matt Register, great guy. But he was an investment banker, and I called him and he said, well, I'm not down at the Galleria office. I'm up at my wife's real estate office in Spring. And I said, well, that's closer. That's great. So I got in the car and went up and I sat down. And he told me the story of how he started a radio program for his wife's real estate business.
Okay.
And when he finished, I said, Matt, you have got to do this for business. In Houston, we have maybe one or two programs. We're the fourth largest city in the United States. We got 2 programs on the radio about business. We ought to have 10. There ought to be competitors left and right.
Right.
You need to do this. And he said, I don't have the contacts. I got all the technical.
Right.
But you're a coach. You got the contacts. Let's do it together. And I said, well, I don't know anything about radio, so let me think about it. And I went home. I talked to my wife. She said, you know you're going to do this because you don't know anything about it. I'm a seeker and a learner.
Yep.
And so that night I sat up late and I wrote a business plan and I took it to Matt and he read it. We made a few minor modifications and we started.
Holy cow.
At this point, we have just short of 1 million listeners a week. We have 2,000 hits a day on the TexasBusinessRadio.com, and we've done over 600 interviews that are on YouTube and on our website. So it's been highly successful beyond our dreams.
Yeah, that's incredible.
What a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. So 600 executives coming on the show, explaining what they do, explaining what their businesses
Right.
are out there and the services they're supplying. So you kind of mentioned about this coaching, and so there's a whole bunch of coaches, right, running around, but you're actually a professional certified coach, and so a lot of the folks that came on your radio show were actually people either you had coached or in the future you ended up coaching.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. So you kind of tied it all together, which I'm not sure it was done on purpose, but kudos to you, right?
Well, it turned out to be the main reason to do it. You don't make money doing radio.
Right.
And the real power of Texas Business Radio was that we videoed everything we did. That's unique.
Right.
We put it on the website, and it offered me a chance to meet a lot of very interesting people that have been very successful, very creative, that have all kinds of stories of overcoming, adversity and things of that sort. It's just, to me, it was is an absolute blast, and it in a sense fed a little bit of my coaching practice.
Yeah, that's
So
incredible.
People would meet me and ask me what I do, and I'd get into it. And next thing you'd say, well, I'd like to come meet one of your peer advisory group meetings or something.
Yeah, that's really neat. And you can tell you've got a passion for helping people and a passion for Texas Business Radio and what you guys were able to accomplish. Let's segue a little bit. So what you really do for a living outside of the radio is you're a professional coach. And so I think that coach word gets lost a lot in translation. Tell me a little bit about being professionally certified, what that means. I know it's a big deal, and the value you're providing as a coach to.
Well, that's an interesting story. It also shows my personality. When I moved here 15 years ago, I was heavily recruited by Vistage, which is the world's largest CEO membership organization.
Right.
And I wasn't really looking for a job. I had a job, but they finally convinced me that this might actually be the fulfillment of a passion that I've had.
Yep.
So during my career, when I had to make a living and educate my kids, I was a partner in 3 of the 4 big 4 accounting firms.
Wow.
Okay, so I was a partner at Deloitte. I was a partner in charge of the consulting office for Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky, and for Coopers. So I made a living building consulting practices. I felt that was a great vehicle for my passions because it allowed me to help business leaders. And I could see I was having an impact with the business leaders. I worked with Sam Walton personally for 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
And it just was such a wonderful opportunity to be of help and also use my technical experience as a computer scientist. But when I got into coaching, it was even better because when you're in the consulting business, what you're doing is you're telling them what they need to do. And that's good because they're lost and they really don't know what to do. And we bring real technical experts from all over the world. But when you're in coaching, it's not really my agenda, and I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to help you find your agenda. I'm here to challenge you to accomplish what you said you wanted to do and to hold you accountable for that. And the impact that can have on people's lives can be amazing, particularly business people. It's lonely at the top. They got nobody to talk to. So I facilitate various different groups, CEO groups, key employee groups, mastermind groups, where a group of CEOs come together and help each other. It's a totally different environment and has different purposes.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I have what I call a 3-legged stool in my practice. One is the one-on-one coaching as a professional certified coach, business and life, but I focus on business. And then the peer advisory groups or the roundtables or mastermind groups. And then I do a quarterly speaker workshop, which is a 3-hour workshop. We bring in nationally recognized speakers 4 times a year, and we'll draw 50 to 70 people, CEOs, business leaders, into that. And that's the 3 legs. And you put them together, the impact it can have on a young or even older, obviously, but young, aggressive heir apparent or someone that's started a business, really been successful, wonders, what can I do from here? Where do I take it from here? How do I move it forward?
Yep.
You can have a group of 14 to 15 other similar people that can advise you.
Right.
In a roundtable type thing. You can have a professional coach that can help you personally. And then you can have the workshops that keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world, what's going on in technology.
Right.
That's what my coaching practice is about.
So you're almost kind of like a moderator for everybody's personal and business, almost board of directors. So you're sitting there with 12 other people.
We call it a private board, right?
That's really unique. Really unique. And I know I can speak from experience. You've done wonders with me and my firm and helped me grow tremendously. And it's incredible when you get all these minds together. You process a challenge or an idea, or you're talking about what's going on even personally. Somebody in that room's been there before, right? And so it's really nice to get a set of feedback that isn't somebody not telling you the truth. They're just going to tell you how it is. It's not sugar-coated, and it's there to help.
And that's the value of the roundtable. It's to get advice from people who've been down the road. They may have done it wrong. That's good things to learn too.
Right.
And then in the coaching, I get to focus not so much on what I think you ought to do after 45 years professional coach.
Right.
The hardest part of becoming a coach was to quit that, or I say coach, but as a consultant. What I get to do is help you decide what you want to do based upon your own beliefs. So I take the position that you're totally resourceful, creative, and whole. You have the answers. You just need a little nudging to get you there. And then once you decide, I like this, this is what I want to do, I knew this all along.
Right.
I mean, the best coaching sessions when you walk away and they're excited because they really have a focus now on what their challenge was, and they wonder why I was even necessary, because you're thinking that all the time.
The light bulb went off.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's kind of what it is. And that's the beauty of it. I can just smile and walk. So, very rewarding. It is a passion to help other people. I just do it through business people. I like to help business people.
That's really, really unique. Thanks for sharing. So you know, we've gone through the coaching practice and we've gone through the roundtable discussions and kind of how those help business owners and get to where they want to go. You'd also talked about the speakers 4 times a year, and when we were talking a little bit before this, I think you called it the Symposium.
Yes.
Can you tell the listeners a little bit about what the Symposium is, how it works, and what it's there for as that third leg of that tripod?
Right. So about I guess 2016, 3.5 years ago, my executive advisor group wanted to do something special. Long story short is I arranged to have a nationally recognized speaker come in, and the advisors all invited their clients and their prospects. And we got, in our first meeting, we had about 40 people. We had a speaker come in from Baltimore that spoke on LinkedIn.
Oh, wow.
And the topic was, it's not social, it's business.
Right.
And she really knocked it out of the park. But it's like 3-hour presentation, and we get some sponsors to help cover the cost.
Okay.
So people can come for free.
Oh, wow.
All right. And the sponsors love it because they get access. And it's turned into an event now. We have 65, I think the last one was 68 people, business leaders that came to hear it. And we do it in a big hotel.
Big conference room in a hotel, whole deal.
Yeah, we were talking about 100 capacity for 100 people.
Yeah.
And it's just turned into something great, and it's become part of my, really the center of my practice. So what I do on one-on-one coaching, what I do as facilitating roundtables and mastermind groups. And this has become the opportunity to tie all that together in something that business people really will get value out of.
Right.
They come to learn best business practices, what's going on with technology, and to meet, socialize with other peers.
Yeah, that's really neat.
And we call it the Symposium for Innovative Growth, and we do it every quarter.
Wow. And how do you get access to the Symposium? Is that through you? Is that through
me or one of the executive advisors, the Houston Executive Advisors, or, the best way is just call me or email me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
we'll make sure.
LinkedIn, so.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to put your information out there. Absolutely. So, guys, you heard it here from the horse's mouth, right? You want to get to the Symposium, 65 to 70 people of your peers talking about something that's going to help you grow, going to help you learn, and what's going on in the world. You contact Mr. Jay Curry. So, yeah, that's really neat as that third leg to the stool. Very cool idea.
Powerful.
So early in our conversations, you had mentioned that you actually personally advised Sam Walton for 5 years, which is just, you don't hear that name very often, right? So
not anymore, but it was a big deal then. Of course, I was a young man too. So
yeah, there you go. So, man, what an opportunity. Tell us a little bit about, what that looked like and what happened. You learned from him. And yeah, that's
an
awesome.
Interesting story. So I was a staffer, senior staff for what's now Ernst & Young, the young side of Ernst & Young, in the consulting side. And I went around, doing IT consulting for small to medium-sized companies. Long story short, though, the auditors were sending their audit side people up to do the computer audits at Phillips Petroleum.
Okay.
And they were pretty intimidated. Phillips had like a 4-floor building. It was all dark. There were no windows.
You're talking about Bartlesville.
Yes.
So this is
Yeah.
funny, but so my
It's
dad
gonna-
worked in that building. I lived in Myrtlesville for 5 years. That's pretty
Wow. It'd be interesting to know if it's the same parent. No, you weren't born, so it wasn't.
funny.
But anyway, they asked the consulting people, maybe one of the IT people could go up and not be intimidated.
Right.
So they sent me. And long story short, it went very well. I started doing audits for Philips, and then we had another client over in Bentonville, Arkansas called Walmart.
Yeah.
And the same issue came, hey, why don't we send Jay over there? So I went over, I did the computer audit, security and controls review.
Okay.
Okay. And then the first year when I wrote my report, they being my boss and Mr. Walton decided they better sit in on the first meeting. So he brought his CFO and my boss came and I gave my report. It was in the Holiday Inn in Bentonville, Arkansas, in the cafeteria. Okay?
That's awesome.
With the guy that would soon be the richest man in the world.
Right.
So I gave my report, and after that, both the CFO and my boss said, well, don't need to do that anymore. You can handle it fine.
Do your thing.
So for the next 4 years, I did that same report. I would go over to Walmart and do the security controls review, and then Mr. Walton and I would go to the Bentonville Holiday Inn. And we had some very good conversations. It was basically me telling him, where he was exposed from a security point of view, and him telling me, well, now, Jay, I know that you ought to have passwords, and we shouldn't be letting the secretaries type them and put them up on their.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine.
And I'd say, well, it's just my job to tell you.
Yeah.
And one time in our last one, I got to where I was probably doing 4 projects. I was on a first name basis. I didn't call him first name, but he would call me Jay when he'd see me. And I did an awful lot of consulting work for them, helping them select the first software. I helped them at one point do an evaluation of a system very early compared to what we have today, where they put dish on their trucks so they could track where they are and stuff.
Yeah.
Today we do it on our phones.
Right.
But in those days, it was pretty new stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I was involved when they did their Cersei warehouse, which was a dark warehouse it was the first one that they built. And I did the security controls review of that and reported to him. And it's where trucks would come in and people would unload the trucks, put it on a conveyor and go up into the building, untouched by human hands after that, stored. And then on the other side of the building, trucks were there and the
automation at its finest.
The boxes come down to probe. This one's going to Arkansas, this one's going to Oklahoma, this one's going to Arizona.
Incredible.
And and so I was involved in that, and that was actually mentioned in his book that he wrote about Walmart. But anyway, it turned out to be wonderful. The last meeting I started to say that I had with him, I made a comment because he had a very unusual approach to funding IT. Okay. Usually IT gets a little sliver and they have to fight for every dollar and try to, His philosophy was, I'm going to give you a small piece of every dollar we bring in, very small piece. But as the company became one of the biggest in the world, that small piece became huge.
Right.
And they became one of the biggest computer capable companies and automated than in the world. I mean, it was amazing. But he stuck to that philosophy. When they doubled sales from 5 billion to 20 billion or 10 billion, the IT budget doubled.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I told him the last time we were together, I didn't know it was going to be the last time, but I said, Mr. Walton, I have to congratulate you on your commitment, and talked about. It's very unique. And what you've done with your IT group compared to what I've seen in other places that I've worked. And he said, Jay, don't ever forget, it's never what you've done. It's what your team has done.
Wow.
And he really was, it would have been easy for him to say, yeah, I came up with that idea and it was smart and everything, but no, it was credit to his team that did it.
That's incredible.
That was Sam Walton. He was quite a man.
Man. So what do you think? You think his biggest trait, I guess, was his ability to lean into his team, that, he hired the smartest people in the room to tell him what to do? Or what do you think the trait is that got him to where he is today? I mean, he's just what he did with that business is just incredible.
Yes, well, he hired smart people.
Yeah.
And he stuck with them. For example, I mean, there's just so much about Walmart in the early days. I'm talking about when they were, I think I started working with them, they maybe had 30 stores. Okay, by the time I left, they were, I mean, in 5 years, it just thousands. But when they would go in and build a facility, they'd buy a big plot, right? And they knew that the shoe place that they worked with would have this, and they would build out a whole strip mall, basically, with Walmart being the center.
Right.
And he knew what every one of those, and he stuck with every one of those companies. They just became a team in themselves.
Yeah.
Walmart comes in, the first store is going to be a shoe store, the next store is going to be a dollar store, the next store is going to be, and just that, a simple example of how he found his team, he stuck with them, and made it work.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was very interesting character.
Incredible man. And I appreciate you sharing. That's a really, really unique
Fun
story. So absolutely. So I would love to hear, every person throughout their career experiences different hurdles, and some of them just seem to be more apparent than others. Give us an example of, one of the big hurdles you've seen in your career, and maybe how you were able to overcome that, and how you got through that, kind of like a success story.
Well, first, let me start by saying, if you ask that question of somebody and they don't have one, then they're either lying or they're not very mature.
We call it full of it. Yeah.
Life doesn't quite work that way. So I've got one. Let's see. So I went to a very small school in high school.
Okay.
There were 65 in my graduating class.
And this was in Indiana?
This was in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Stigler, Oklahoma. And there were less than 2,000 people in the town. But the point is that I was very good in math, very good in science, but we weren't really good at English literature. And I say that because at my 50th reunion, that was kind of one of the things we laughed about. So as a result, and I wasn't very good at it. I always got B's. I couldn't get an A in anything having to do with English.
Wow.
Went to Oklahoma State, had the same problem. Then got it, jumping 5 years ahead, started my own business, and then went to work for a company and ended up with the Young side of Ernst & Young that we had talked about. And I was there for about 4 years. I started as a junior staff, got up, and it was time for me to be promoted to manager.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when that time came, I sat down with my boss and good friend, even today, and he said, "Jay, you're not going to get promoted. And not only you're not going to get promoted, we don't think you're ever going to get promoted. And what we're going to do is we're going to help you get a CIO job at one of our customers. Your clients love you.
Right.
You do great work in technology. What you've been doing for Phillips Petroleum and Conoco and Walmart, that's not the problem. That's been great."
Right.
And I said, "Well, what is the problem?" And they said, "Well, it's your reports." I said, "What's wrong with my reports?" He said, "You ever read one?" I said, "Of course I read them. I wrote them, so I read them." So, well, we have to rewrite every one of them. And if you're going to be a manager, you've got to write reports. You've got to write proposals. You've got to help other younger people under you do that.
Right.
And we just don't think you're ever going to get there. It has nothing to do with your technical. It has nothing to do with your personality or how you get along with people. Or,
right.
It's totally your writing.
So they told you had hit your ceiling because you couldn't fill out the TPS report.
That's right. So I went home and talked to my wife, Nancy, and told him, well, they're going to help me find a good job. And we talked over the weekend and decided that wasn't what I wanted to do. I had a passion for this work. I love working with Sam Walton. I love working with the CEOs of some pretty big companies, but also a lot of medium-sized companies. So what I did is I went back Monday and I said, "Look, if you say my consulting is good and you say my clients like me, give me a year. And if I can't show you I can learn to write, then I'll quietly fade away.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we don't have any problem with that. You're never going to get there. You got no chance. But sure, if you want to stick around for another year, we'll even give you a little raise.
That's incredible.
So I did. And I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, obviously, working with that part of the country.
Yep.
And I went to Tulsa Junior College, and I took a course in business writing. And when that was over, I kind of enjoyed that. I was learning something I hadn't learned. I'm probably 24 years old and 25 years old. After that, they didn't have a business the next semester course, so I took fictional writing.
Oh, wow.
I figured half our reports
Writing's
were fiction
writing.
anyway. Yeah. We're making it up as we go as consultants, so, half of it's fiction. So I did that. I ended up getting involved with the writers organization. I ended up getting invited to be in a pretty tough peer group that met every week.
Yeah.
You had to do so much writing, you had to bring it, and then they critiqued it, got involved with all of that. Long story short, when the year came around, I was the lead author of a new book called The ABCs of Microcomputers. That was published by Prentice Hall, which at the time was one of the biggest.
They were it, yeah.
Yeah. And I had proposed 3 other books because I wanted to do a more professional on how to find and buy good software, how to implement software, to the editor at Prentice Hall. He said he loved it and we're going to do that.
Oh my gosh.
So when it came around, I got promoted, and they put me in charge of every proposal over $25,000. And I started going around the country giving speeches on, the first book was on the ABCs of microcomputers in the days.
Right.
Third grader knows what we were learning today, but it was called the ABCs of Microcomputers, and I went around talking about technology trends.
Right.
I was talking about, one day there'll be a computer in your watch, your car will be controlled. People just laugh at me.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen in my lifetime.
Absolutely.
Some of the crazy stuff. So I became a pretty popular speaker on computer trends, and my career, I became a consultant, was a consultant until I semi-retired and became a coach.
Man, that's incredible. So you went from being told you can't write a report to you've now got how many books?
Well, for nonfiction, and I have a award-winning fiction novel, and I'll be coming out with my second one soon.
Oh my gosh. So awesome, man.
Fun.
Love
Life is
it.
fun. You got to enjoy it, man.
I
It's
feel like
not
I
a
need to tell
destination.
somebody, come up to you on the sidewalk and tell you you can't do something and just watch you go do it, right? Follow you with the camera.
Well,
and
that's
see what
kind of,
happens.
my grandmother always said, you got to be an attorney because you're just, you'll argue anything. And don't dare tell you not to do something because that's the first thing you'll accomplish.
Right.
And so that's just me. I'm a learner, and it's something I needed to learn, and I took it serious.
That's awesome.
Paid off.
That's awesome. Well,
So you can overcome whatever obstacles. You just got to focus on it, and the rewards are amazing.
Yeah,
So, I want
that's
to put that in there.
really neat.
Anybody can do that.
Well, and as a coach, if you're able to dip into a story like that to one of your coaching clients or one of these CEOs, they can't tell you've never done it before, right? You dove into the weeds, you went, you beat the odds. Not only that, now you're the expert. You're training everybody on what they told you couldn't do. So just take it that next step further. Really unique. Awesome to hear.
Interesting. Thank you.
So where do you see, I'm going to rephrase that. So I'm going to do something a little bit unique that most people don't do on shows. I'm going to ask you to predict the future. So you've been doing coaching a long time. You've done these groups, you've done the symposiums, you're doing it with individuals. Where do you see coaching going in the next 5-10 years? Where do you see, the need? Where do you see people going to get it? What's your vision on kind of where everything is headed in your expertise?
Well, let me start by saying in my day, and by that I mean 15, 20 years ago, coaching was kind of a rare thing.
Yeah.
And you got a coach when your writing's horrible, you go to a university and learn how to write, or you get a coach to help you.
Right.
If you're in business, then you get a coach to try to help you get over your obstacles. That was a pretty rare thing. It isn't anymore. It is very much the norm, and it is, I think, at the beginning of being in the mainstream.
Right.
Why? We're an international economy. We have to compete. When I was younger, we could take 6 months to figure something out.
Right.
Today, if you don't figure it out pretty quick,
you're washed up on shore.
Your competition is gonna figure it out and beat you. So today, I believe it's become right up into mainstream, and I think over the next 5 to 10 years, maybe 15, it's almost going to be a necessity. There's too much value to be gained.
Right.
Okay. Now, it's not for everybody. People who already know all the answers, people that don't need to develop and mature, people that are growing just fine the way they are now.
Right.
Coaching will not be of value to them. And I don't mean to sound like that's negative. It's the personality thing. But if you're a learner and you have a passion and you want to grow and you're going to be successful, then having a coach and a peer advisory group roundtable can multiply your success and reduce the amount of time. I think in the future, that's going to be almost standard mandatory that you've got a coach. The peer advisory groups, when I started with Vistage, there were 5 or 6 competitors, EO, all good competitors, good companies, YPO. Today, there are like 90.
Yeah, there's a ton out there.
Yes, and I know a lot of people say, well, it's just confusing. Well, no, it's a lot of alternatives. There's a lot of different types of companies that do this. Individuals, 20 years ago, you couldn't get certified in this. Now we have an international coach federation that oversees the industry and makes sure that people are qualified. I mean, it's like CPAs back before the Depression.
Right.
You got them on every corner now, and that, I think, is where it's going. I'm worried about costs. Some of the big companies are getting very expensive.
Right.
And when your costs go up like that, and that's okay if your return on the investment is there, and it is, but it's got to be a bigger company.
Right.
That when they double, they go from $500,000 or $500 million to billion, 2 billion.
Right.
Then a $20,000 or $20,000 a year investment is really a drop in the bucket. But if you're a small or medium-sized firm, maybe a 20-person company, you can't do that. Okay?
Right.
So I'm worried about that. That's why I focus on the smaller size companies. Not, maybe 1 million be the minimum, but generally I say 5 million in revenue, or 20 employees, up to half a billion, 500 million. But the reality is, I'm running in the 20 to 50. There's a huge need there.
Right.
Those people, those CEOs, those business leaders are going to have a huge need if they want to keep up with the competition.
Right.
They need to have every advantage they can have, and their own private advisory board led by a professional and a certified coach, along with, like I said, in the workshops where you learn what's going on from other people.
Right.
That's going to be a necessity, absolutely required if you're going to be successful. That's where I think it's going. Does that make sense?
Well, I think so. And, to recap a little bit, Exxon and Ford and Disney are going to pay the $20,000 or $18,000 a head for their executives to go get this because
they pay even more.
They see it, right?
That's the goldsmiths in the world.
And so now you've got a whole bunch of folks that are in the $20 to $50 million a year range that can't go buy every executive a new car every year, nor would it be the right thing to do for their business. And even in the 100 to 500 million that have shareholders, like, you can't convince your shareholders it's the great idea to go do that. They're going to look on the balance sheet and go, I don't know. So there's got to be other alternatives, and I agree with you. I think that makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
I think that's what's actually happening right now.
Yeah, it's a good view. I would agree with you. It's a good view into the future. So lastly, what would be your piece of advice you've coached so many people in all these different size segments? What's your best piece of advice to the business owner, the CEO that is, relentlessly going to be successful, but just hasn't really picked a direction yet? What's your best piece of advice to kind of start that process?
Become a leader, become a learner. Okay. Find your passion and get all the help you can afford. That threesome, I think, it's all about becoming better leaders, making better decisions, getting better results, and those three things. Without the passion, it's tough. If you're not passionate about it, then
Right.
you need to go be doing something else.
Right.
You got to have the passion. You got to be a learner, because I don't care where you are in that cycle. Every stage, every next level you go to is different, with different challenges, different problems to deal with. And having a peer group that has been down that road, made mistakes, and
Right.
can be huge value. And then having a coach that can help dig inside you and help bring it up and challenge you and hold you accountable. That would be my advice. Those three things.
So again, the three: lifelong learner, become a learner, find your passion. And then what's funny, number three, this is the second time I've heard this one. Tim Zacharias was on the show with us last week, and the first thing he said was ask for help when you need it.
Yes.
And he even mentioned that he ran a long time without asking for help, and the second he did, how great things were able to change. So I think that's really, really great advice.
He's an amazing leader that has gone through those stages, and he has the passion, and he is a learner, and he is willing to ask for advice.
Yeah, it's very unique, very cool.
Interesting. I haven't seen that video, but I'll
Yep.
have to look it up now.
Yep. So to close, I kind of like to do something funny. I actually stole this from David Faraday, the golf announcer. So at the end of his show, he'll take, Pitbull or Jennifer Lopez, or it could be a golfer, and he'll ask them a series of rapid fire questions and see if you can't get any good responses. Get your get your brain ticket.
Hey, at my age, this moves kind of slow. So.
Hey, it's all right. Rapid fire at J speed. Here we go. What's your favorite sound do you love?
The sound of dripping water.
Interesting. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt someday?
Wow. Profession, fishing guide.
Fishing guide. All right, that's a good one. You might be a professional fisherman, though. If you've never listened to Jay's voicemail, the guy can fish. Don't let him fool you. Favorite curse word, real fast.
Crap.
What would you like God to say to you at the pearly gates as you're walking through the door?
Come on in. There's a lot of people eager to see you.
That's really cool. Well, hey, Jay, thanks so much for your time, man. Learned a lot. Awesome hearing some of your great war stories and just, hearing some of the advice you've got for all of our listeners out there. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
It's been fun. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.